Hi everyone, welcome to Coffee and Chat. I'm Jenny. So if this is your first time here, I would encourage you to watch the introductory video for Coffee and Chat. That way you get a little bit of background about myself and what Coffee and Chat is about, and you can determine if it's something that you'd want to tune into. However, if you are a friend returning for a visit, you know the drill. Get your coffee, get comfy, and let's chat. Okay, so this is part 3 of the chat series on Concussions 101. Parts 1 and 2, I gave a definition of what a concussion is, and I offered some of my thoughts about concussions in general. I also provided some practical tips on things you can do to help the healing process if you or someone that you know is injured. The major takeaway from those first sessions was get informed about concussions. Learn what they are, what the effects are, and the management and rehab/recovery process involved. Today, I'm going to talk about Post Concussion Syndrome, as I mentioned earlier in the previous video, which is also now called persistent concussive symptoms. So the reason I did this series was because I have post-concussion syndrome, and throughout my rehabilitation process, I realized the lack of understanding there is about concussions, generally speaking. And as a result, people sometimes don't know how to manage or treat those, like myself, who have concussions, especially if they end up with post-concussion syndrome. Now, in the previous chat session, I stressed the importance of having a supportive network of people to help to facilitate the healing and recovery. So in this chat, I'm going to share my experience with PCS. That's what we'll call it from here on in. So hopefully you can appreciate what it's like to deal with this type of injury and get a better understanding of what to do if you go through it yourself, or if you know someone who's dealing with it. As usual, we'll start with a definition. So post-concussion syndrome, and as I said, I'll refer to it as PCS from here on in, is, according to the Mayo Clinic, a set of symptoms that may continue for weeks, months, or years after a concussion. So here's the thing that people don't realize, that when you have a concussion, you can be dealing with this for, as I said, weeks, months, or even years after the injury, which, I'll tell you about. So these symptoms include, but they're not limited to, headaches, migraines, an inability to concentrate and focus, memory issues, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, balance problems, irritability, anxiety, depression, noise and light sensitivity, ringing in the ears, which I'm having right now, and in some cases, changes in taste. This is not an exhaustive list. Some people might have all of these symptoms at one point during the recovery, and there may be other symptoms that I've not mentioned that they may also experience. But I have to tell you that I have experienced pretty well everything that I mentioned above, all of the symptoms that I mentioned above at one point or another since the accident. So here are some facts about PCS. PCS affects 5 to 35% of people who get concussions. And the risk factors are age and sex of the individual. So if you're older, and older being over the age of 35, because I mentioned in the previous chat that the best time for recovery from a concussion is between the ages of 18 and 34. And they find that more women tend to have PCS or tend to develop PCS, but it's still not certain as to whether that's because women are the ones who tend to seek medical care more often than men. And also PCS is not linked to the severity of the injury. All right, so the number one problem is that with concussions is that its symptoms and the injury itself, they don't show up on diagnostic tests. So you won't see a concussion or PCS on x-rays, ultrasounds, or CT scans. Doctors are most interested in making sure that you don't have a brain bleed when you get a head injury. So that will show up on a scan or an MRI, but concussions do not. And unfortunately, this is what allows people to minimize the effects of both concussions and PCS, right? Because if you can't see it, then it's hard to understand something that you can't see. I can walk, I can talk, I can think, and if I don't tell people that I have PCS, they wouldn't know. And even if I do say I have post concussion syndrome, they're like, what? They don't understand. They don't know what it is. But the thing with me is that my brain can't function in the same way that it used to before my accident. Now remember the definition, as I mentioned in the first session, the definition of a concussion is it said that it affects the brain function, right? And all the different areas, it talked about all the different areas that that would be affected by this. Well, that's the problem with post-concussion syndrome. You can't see my migraines. You can't see my fatigue. You can't see my struggles with concentration or focus. Can't see my dizziness. You might be able to see the effects, like when it's in full blown, like when it's in full swing. Can't see the nausea as a result of all of these symptoms either. And as I said, the problem is, with human nature, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And what that leads to is, people thinking and accusing you of faking or exaggerating your symptoms. And the unfortunate thing is that these symptoms can be debilitating and can completely turn your life upside down. It's the same issue that we had with mental illness, if you recall, a while back, where it wasn't even considered as a problem. And so mental illness, like anxiety and depression, can result from concussions, as I mentioned earlier, not only because of like physiologically, because of the interruption in the biochemical processes in the body directly caused by the injury, but also indirectly because of the lack of understanding and the incorrect judgment of people around you. Very simply, people don't believe that you were experiencing what you're experiencing. And what makes it worse is the recovery from post-concussion syndrome is not linear. So you don't just keep improving. When you start improving, you don't just keep improving. What happens often with concussion recovery and in post-concussion syndrome is you take 3 or 4 steps forward and then 2 or 3 steps back. So in my case, I would have a good day and then I would think, hey, yeah, I'm okay, everything is good, I'm back to normal. So the next day I would try to do what I used to do, eager to get back to my normal way of life, and wind up back in bed for days. So, just that alone is very discouraging, and this is where the depression can actually set in. All right, so let me just back up a little bit and explain what happened to me. So I had just started my 3-week vacation. I was super excited, had all these plans. First weekend, I was coming home late one evening on the highway and ran over what turned out to be a piece of a muffler. People, please maintain your vehicles so that parts of it are not falling off on the highway and then people aren't running over it. The muffler lodged onto the bottom of my car and I had to pull over on the shoulder of the highway. I got out, checked my car. Again, it was late night, so there weren't too many cars on the highway, so it was safe for me to do so. But as soon as I got back to my car and sat down, I was hit by a vehicle traveling obviously at highway speed because he was on the highway. So I was hit on the driver's side of my car. I guess this individual misjudged the exit ramp because he was drunk. So the impact thrusted my head from side to side vigorously for what seemed like eternity. I had absolutely no control over my head. I literally thought my neck was going to snap. It didn't, and luckily I didn't hit my head, but I recall that like it was like I was in a dream. So I was dazed, and I recall the major parts of the incident, but like details are still like blurry for me. My car was totaled. So because there was no impact, I assumed, I'll be fine. I'll just wait it out. I'm a little bit dazed, but I'll be fine. So I just wanted to, I wanted to get home and do what I needed to do to rest up and, get back to my vacation plans. That was my that was my goal and my hope. It happened like late Friday night, and I recall that weekend I couldn't sleep. Like I was very restless, which was probably, now knowing what the protocol is for concussion recovery, or like the things that you have to be careful of in the first the acute stages of concussion is probably the best thing. But on the third day, I remember I was sitting in my chair in my family room, and I just remember this excruciating pain. I felt like my head was just splitting open, and just the headache was just, it was so intense. I don't usually get headaches, so this was it was really bad. And then I started getting this horrible pain like down the side of my neck and in the upper part of my shoulders. Now, I had spoken to a friend of mine who was also worked in neuro rehab, and my sister who was a nurse. And with that, I also had slurred speech and a seriously altered gait. That is like when I started walking, I was taking these huge, gigantic steps, and I didn't know why. I was very unbalanced, and I was taking these huge steps, like I was like a robot. So on the advice, actually on the insistence of my friend and my sister, I did go to get checked out, and it was confirmed that I did have a concussion. This was August 2018. Today in April 2024, I'm still dealing with the post concussion syndrome, or symptoms from that concussion. And it was a tough road. It was a tough road to recovery after that. Well, first of all, I was upset because my vacation was ruined. It was interrupted. And initially I tried to deny the seriousness of the hit, of the injury, believing that positive thinking would make it all go away, but it didn't. And didn't work. I had to go through it. Now, my initial rehab team was fantastic. They were community-based, so community-based rehab professionals. I had a chiropractor who I mentioned earlier in the first two sessions that if it wasn't for her, I don't know her and my friend who's the OT. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be today. So, and I had another OT who was also community-based. And I had a neurologist who was thankfully, this group, they were all very well versed in concussion rehabilitation and management. They understood concussions, they understood the effects, they understood the symptoms, they understood the recovery process that I would have to undertake. So for the first, I would say 8 months, things were going well. I was recovering. I did finally come to the acceptance that this was not going to be an easy fix, and I was going to have to go through that journey. However, when I tried to return to my workplace, I had to take time off. So I was off for about 6 or 7 months from work. And when I tried to return to work, then my long-term disability insurance company got involved, and that's when things became difficult. And that's where I want to say that my return to work experience, it was traumatizing. It's traumatizing. Despite their insistence that they knew how to deal with concussion rehabilitation, because I was not the first employee to have a concussion, it became very clear to me that their knowledge, practice, and understanding was not what they thought it was. I was made to feel like I was exaggerating my symptoms, despite the fact that I was completely compliant with all the instructions and requests that which were made of me by the very insensitive rehabilitation team that I had to work with, and the instructions by my neurologist and my OT. Yeah, they decided that I wasn't recovering quickly enough, so they sort of stripped me of my old rehab team and insisted that I work with their rehab facility. Anyway, that was part of the difficulty, because the people, I don't want to say all of them, one or two of them were not very sensitive to what I was going through. I remember telling one of the individuals I was working with during a session that I was starting to get headaches and I was starting to feel nauseous. And he just simply shrugged his shoulders and said, well, I get headaches too. So, needless to say, part of the recovery process for post-concussion syndrome, or just concussions in general, is you gradually work your way to a threshold where you start to feel symptomatic, and then you pull back. Okay, and then the next time you go a little bit further, and then you pull back. But it's a gradual and progressive trajectory. So I was supposed to let the rehab professionals know when I started to become symptomatic, so they could sort of they could determine, how much more I should do, or if they should scale back. But when I tried to do that, I was just made to feel as if, you're whining, you're complaining, just be quiet and do what you're told to do. So throughout the process, I lost friends in my workplace as a result of being depicted as difficult and exaggerating my symptoms, when if I said that there were certain things that I couldn't do, or I had to take a break from, it was kind of, I was looked at as if, oh yeah, well, she's just being lazy. But that's okay, because my close friends and the people who actually knew me were there to support, and I'm so appreciative of that. I just want to mention that I think one of the most disappointing experiences was when a very close friend of mine, who knew me for quite a while, accused me of being lazy because I wasn't able to work out in the way that I used to, and I wasn't able to keep up with the pace that I used to. And this was when I was struggling the most. This is when I was trying to do the return to work plan, and he told me I just needed a kick in the behind to get going again, and it was all in my head. That again, I wasn't the first person who had a concussion. Because I didn't hit my head, people just couldn't understand how I could be struggling for so long. I also had another very close friend who called me on the phone during a relapse phase, and when I tried to explain how I was feeling, because I wasn't feeling great, she very abruptly and impatiently asked, "What's wrong with you? You sound fine to me. I don't get it." Not to mention the legal side of this ordeal. All of this was going on, all of these struggles were going on with the backdrop of the fact that the driver who had hit me and ran away from the scene because he was drunk, I learned that he would face no criminal penalty for his actions that night. None whatsoever. Because, anyway, I won't get into the further legalities, because my mediation is coming up in a few months. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be 6 years to the date that I was injured. This is when everything is coming to fruition on the legal side of things. Yeah, this guy, he didn't even want to cooperate with his insurance company. But in the meantime, my life was being completely overturned and scrutinized by the insurance companies, just to make sure that I wasn't, again, trying to be fraudulent, and I wasn't trying to milk the insurance companies of money. And I can assure you that the losses that people go through when they are dealing with post-concussion symptoms or persistent concussive symptoms long term, the losses far outweigh the benefits. 99.9% of the people, I know there are scammers out there, and I know that's why people are sometimes apprehensive to believe you when you're going through a difficulty that they can't see and that they can't understand. But I can assure you, like, just from the support groups that I've been to and the people that I've spoken to who've experienced this, 99% of the people, 99.9% of us would give anything to be able to return to our normal way of life. There's no amount of money that could replace the losses that you go through when you have to deal with this kind of situation. And I'm not just talking about financially, I'm talking about your way of life that money can't compensate for. So while all of this was going on, I'll have to be honest, I became angry. I became discouraged. I became depressed because I just couldn't understand the injustice. It wasn't fair. I was just trying to enjoy my vacation. I was just minding my own business and wound up with an injury that sort of catapulted me into this scenario where I had no control over how I was feeling. Like, I mentioned to you that in the first part of the series that the 3-month delay since my first video was because there are triggers that will sort of make these symptoms resurface. And when that happens, then I just have to, I can't do much. I have to just rest and lay down and rest and sort of remove myself from normal everyday situations. So that's not a picnic, and to me it's just it was like I said, it was difficult. But again, the support that I had from my friends, not from the majority of people around me, but from my close friends and my family, and of course my tech crew, that's what sort of kept me going, along with something else. Now, if you remember, in the very first 2 episodes of Coffee and Chat, I said that every chance, I talked about my faith, and I said that every chance I had to talk about my faith and how it's gotten me through difficult times, I would. So this was and continues to be one of those times, because but God, it got so difficult that I didn't know what to do. I kind of got to the end of myself. I didn't know what to do anymore. And I was praying throughout all of this, but it got to a point where I realized that there was nothing more that I could do. And the scripture came to mind, Psalm 46:10 came to mind, which is, "Be still and know that I am God." And that's what I had to do. I just had to be still. And I started to focus on how God helped me through this, how God was continuing to help me through this, starting with the fact that that night that my vehicle was hit, I could have been killed. Had it been just a few seconds earlier, I spoke to one of the roadworks man. When he learned how the accident happened, he looked at me and said, "You, young lady, you need to go out and buy some lottery tickets, because you're one lucky lady." Had it been just a few seconds earlier, that driver I would have been pinned between my car and his, and with the impact, the damage that he did to my car, my body would not have been able to sustain that damage. So from the get-go, I'm just so grateful that I was not hurt beyond the concussion, and I'm grateful to God that I'm still here today and I'm able to talk about Post Concussion Syndrome and all the other stuff. So I started to focus on the positives and started to thank God for the positives of the situation. And again, the fact that I was not killed during that accident. Also, my friend, my dear friend, who had a background in neuro rehab and was able to guide me through the process from day one to today even. And, you know, the advice that she gave me and the connections that I was able to make, and like I said, the great rehab team I had initially, my neurologist, my chiropractor, my occupational therapist, my family support, my close friends who were supportive and who were compassionate and kind and understanding. But I'm grateful that I had those people to get me through. With regards to my workplace, in all fairness, initially they did try to accommodate me, but when they realized that my recovery was going to take longer, they weren't so nice. And that's being very blunt and honest. They weren't very kind. And at that point, Isaiah 54:17 really came to mind for me. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication is from me, declares the Lord. I really like that scripture. I go back to that a lot. And, you know, it just so happens that practically every single person who was involved in making things really difficult for me to return to work, I heard that most of them are no longer with the organization that I was with. So again, you know, sometimes with the faith, it's nice to be able to just let go and just know that somebody has your back. Somebody or an entity that can do things that you would never be able to do in your lifetime. Another positive, you know, that I thank God for is that I was able to get recertified as a personal trainer, which I really enjoy, because actually the exercising was actually my reprieve. That's what helped me to get through the whole recovery process with the Post Concussion Syndrome, all the trauma, you know, all the other, the anxiety, the depression. The exercise helped to alleviate a lot of the symptoms. I was able to start Coffee and Chat, gave me an opportunity to finally start Coffee and Chat, because I've been talking about doing this for years. And it, after I had the car accident, it kind of, it prolonged my foray into YouTube and social media. So I'm grateful for that. That got started. And as I said, the court case is not yet over. I have a hearing coming up in August, but I have faith. God has been so good to me thus far. I have faith that He will carry me into and through this hearing in August 2024. I have another scripture for that one, Isaiah 49:25, for I will fight those who fight you. So those are the scriptures that I really relied on, and I continue to rely on them today, and I think I will in the future. Like I said, but God, He has helped me, and He's continuing to help me through perhaps one of the most difficult experiences that I've had thus far. All right, so I'm going to close here, and in conclusion, to close us off, I just want to remind people that concussions can have a serious impact on a person's life. And again, especially if it develops into PCS. Concussion symptoms are real, and people actually do experience it, and we suffer with it. As I said, yeah, scammers do exist. I realize that. But again, most people who go through PCS, again, they would not put their lives on hold for, like, for example, for me, for 6 years. Put their lives on hold for what? A settlement that is far less than what I could have made. in the past 6 years and can make in the future, that doesn't make sense. So when people talk about concussive symptoms, believe them. That's why I encourage people to learn more about concussions. If someone you know has PCS or has been recently concussed, practice compassion, understanding, and patience instead of doubt, judgment, and accusations. And as I mentioned to you in the previous 2 sessions, the Concussion Fix program and the webinar at the Concussion Doc link, those are really good resources for concussions. And if you are struggling with post-concussive symptoms right now, I would highly recommend Concussion Fix as an option. Okay? And last but not least, if you don't have a faith, and I realize a lot of people don't nowadays, but if you don't have one, I hope you will think about how faith helped me to get through this. And I hope that might be incentive for you to maybe consider looking into that further. And for those of you who do have a faith but are not practicing it, it works. All right, everyone. So that concludes the series on concussions. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something from it from a mom's and layman's perspective. And I hope you'll be able to use some of the information that you got here today. So now I can get back on track with my regularly scheduled programming, and I'll get back to my next chat will be on social media. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a safe and blessed day. My forehead shiny? Okay.
Even if it's shiny, just talk.
Okay.
I don't care about nobody who watches your shiny forehead.
Okay, be quiet. Quiet on the set. Okay. Okay, stop. Tech crew. All right, I can't get anything done if you guys are quiet on the set. Okay. Okay. All right, no, stop.
I need severance pay.
Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to Coffee and Chat. I'm Mike. Okay. Did you erase the last one? Did you erase the last tape?
You can't erase it.
I can't erase it.
Okay.
It's still there.
It's still there. Okay, so we might have to go back to that one. All right.
Shh. You go back.
Okay, I've got 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go shower after this.
Shh. And today we're in April 2023. I'm still dealing with 2024.